later on. So just to let you all know that. And this is a super important topic that we have decided to talk about today. We're talking about personal and professional reinvention. And I guess there is no better time to speak about this than in 2022. So, and I have the amazing Lola with me to do justice to this. But before we get into the meat of it, because we've also seen, and I want to say this as we get started, a lot of the people that registered for this session, by the way, we had, I think at the last count, we had maybe about 70 people who registered on Zoom to attend this session, and tells us something about what people want to know or what is important to them, especially in 2022. So we can't wait to get into the meat of the conversation. There were many questions that were asked, very important, poignant questions for people trying to make decisions, transitions in their work or in their career or in their professional lives. And we will touch on some of that today. But the good news is that even if we don't touch on all those today, there's going to be more to touch on in the upcoming sessions that we would have. So I'll keep you posted on that before we end today. So just to give you a sense of what we are going to do today, and it's going to go by pretty fast because we want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm just going to do a quick short introduction, then I'll tell you a little bit about the organizers of this summit and then get us started on the topic before handing over to Lola. So one of the good things about this session is that there's a lot of storytelling and example sharing, which we believe is like a good mentoring moment to help you also pick things from the stories of many of our guests and speakers who will be sharing alongside us. And then we would have the opportunity to ask questions. I might ask one or two questions to Lola as we get started, just to help us tease out some of that content. But then you would also have opportunity to ask more questions. Okay, and so PIA, I'll tell you about Planbpreneur Academy. So that's what the game plan is going to be today. And we're going to be out of here. You won't be surprised that we are already done by the time we're done because it's going to go by so fast. So the host of the Planbpreneur Innovation, this Planbpreneur Launch and Grow series is the Planbpreneur Innovation Academy. And the Planbpreneur Innovation Academy basically is equipping professionals to thrive in the future world of work and to reposition themselves to create new income and impact with entrepreneurial skills and value creation skills. And I'll talk a bit about that at the end of this. But Planbpreneur Innovation Academy is the host of this session. And your speakers, myself, Demialde Oluwasina, founder of Planbpreneur, but also a learning innovation expert, marketing and design and entrepreneurship consultant. For the past several years, I've been privileged and opportuned to lend my voice to multiple global platforms and to consult and work with platforms around learning innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership development. And so Planbpreneur is one of the projects that has come out of all the work that I and the team are doing. And Lola is here. Lola is the Chief Digital Officer at FBN Quest, Nigeria. But she's also an author. She's the founder of 2 startups, and she's done some amazing stuff and also had some of those shifts in her journey, which is going to form part of the stories and the lessons that you will hear about today. So do get ready to listen and just soak in all that we are going to be sharing. Okay, so as we get started, before I bring up Lola, I just want to say this. Like I said in the beginning, there is perhaps no better time to talk about reinvention than now, especially after the pandemic and the structure of the world, so to speak, is changing very rapidly. You know, I was in a conversation on Monday evening, actually, with a group, with a sort of professional group that I usually join with. And somebody was talking about how during the pandemic, he lost his job and he totally had to revamp himself and go after another opportunity, an entrepreneurial opportunity, which is now building. And I don't know, some of the people on this call might be in similar situations. Jobs have been threatened. Businesses, even when you have a business, has been threatened, and the continuously changing world calls us to bring out versions of ourselves that perhaps didn't exist before. And this whole concept of reinvention, just to make sure we're on the same page, is about bringing about a version of yourself that perhaps you were not aware of, or you never even had the courage to try out before, because sometimes that version is locked inside of you and you're feeling like you're stuck in a rut, you're feeling like you're pressured by the things around you, you're feeling that discontent. But sometimes if you don't have the sort of courage, but also the practical tools to help you go on the path where you unleash this new version of yourself, then what happens is after a while, it bubbles, and that bubble just causes a lot of further confusion and self-disappointment. And we've had people who just lash out on other people or mess up the things that are going on in their life simply because they are aching for more, or they're trying to release a new version of themselves. And so one of the goals here is really to give you the pointers on how you can begin to do that, right? Because it's about staying relevant. Reinventing yourself is about staying relevant. Now, there are people on this call who are thinking about changing jobs. And while changing jobs does not even necessarily mean you're reinventing yourself, right? Reinventing yourself means that you're unlocking something else that allows you, for example, to change a job, right? And I can share examples of this from my own story as well, where getting into new assignments, even within the same job, I had to take intentional reinvention process, right? My own story, I started trained in agriculture and then did publishing and advertising, eventually went into higher education, then went into digital strategy. So I've personally gone through phases where I would say I've continued to be faced with reinvention. Now, some of us are pushed to reinvention by circumstance. Now I was talking about the pandemic or maybe a job loss or something. But the good news is that regardless of what pushes you to reinvention, you can trigger and intentionally deal with the process. So reinvention is again about staying relevant, being able to explore new options, or being able to take on new opportunities. Sometimes we can't capture new opportunities because we're not the kinds of people that are able to explore or do justice to those opportunities. And so sometimes it takes an evolution or personal discovery and reinvention to really see, okay, there is this potential skill set I've always had, and now I can confidently take on this opportunity. And so these are some of the important things. But one thing I want to say as well is the mindsets of reinvention, which we talk about today, are critical, as well as the preparation for reinventing yourself and being able to create new income and new impact, or to leverage a part of yourself that you have not been able to leverage up till this point. Okay, so having said that, I believe that gives us some sort of context for what the conversation is going to be about today. And we're open to all the questions that are going to also come along the way to help us even tease out more of the practice and the process of reinvention. It is my pleasure. I have had the pleasure of working with Lola at some point, a couple of years ago. I think it was 5 years ago now. That was 2017, where we worked together briefly at an organization for a short period. And since then, I've been personally impressed by all the progress that she's just made as a person, and the way she's continued to reinvent herself and to bring out new opportunities and to leverage them, and the amazing work that she's doing. So I'm super excited that she will be joining us on this session, and I'm going to turn over to her in a bit. But again, like I said earlier on, she's the Chief Digital Officer of FBM Quest Nigeria. Before that, she was leading, I think, digital innovation and doing some really outstanding work in that space. Before that, she had also founded two startups. I remember Transdat, and I think there's a week in the travel one as well. And recently, last year, she put out an amazing book, Lagos to London, that in some way digs at the story of reinvention, but also talks about finding your path and staying true to your path, right? And you obviously you will be able to check that out later. So that without much ado, and that said, Lola, it's great to have you this evening. I'm going to stop sharing screen and just spotlight you. Sorry, I was trying to spotlight you, but I turned out off your video. It was me. I'm sorry. All right. Lola, it's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Demialde. Good evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm going to, and for the next few minutes, we're going to let you take it away. And then I will come back after 20, 25 minutes, and then we will start with the questions and just tease out a bit more of the good stuff you have for us. Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds good. So
Awesome.
I'm really, pleased to be here. And I think we're sort of speaking on an important topic, which is about personal and professional reinvention. Because we all know the world is evolving so fast. So many things are happening. You wake up, in fact, some skills that were not needed 10 years ago are some of the strongest or sellable skills right now in the market. Even social media, a couple of years ago, there was no such thing. Now, I mean, being a digital marketing expert is a big deal. Being somebody that understands technology is a big deal. So it's just interesting how the world has evolved. And I think it does put pressure on people that, of course, we need to personally and professionally be dynamic and be able to sort of evolve. So I think for me, I'm just going to tell you a bit about my own story. I think for me, what is interesting is right now I'm the Chief Digital Officer for FBN Quest, and a lot of my career has been in digital technology, but it didn't always start like that for me. In fact, for the longest time, I was one of the only people that didn't know in my family what I actually wanted to study. In fact, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I had even applied to be a medical doctor. And this was while I was in Nigeria. And after multiple times applying, I didn't actually get the course that I wanted to study. So they gave me a particular course called Cell Biology and Genetics. And I actually started studying that course until, can you hear me fine? Just checking that. Okay, good. And I started studying that course until at some point, I found out, and so did my parents, that there was a computer foundation course in the UK. And, there was talk at the time that computing was going to be a big thing and technology. So I was like, okay, let me just try it out and sort of see what would happen. I mean, would I like it, And so I went to the UK, I started this foundation course, and what then happened was I sort of just realized I could actually code. So I was actually a good software developer. In fact, it came so naturally to me. And that really made me happy, because if that didn't happen, honestly, I wasn't even sure what what I would study. I just thought, look, I'll just do something and sort of graduate. But what happened is, of course, I took to software development. I was given in fact, I got a scholarship as well, finished with a first class. And really, for me, I was able to find my path, which was at least technology was something I was good at. It was something that I enjoyed as well. And there was a future for it. I think those were the three key things for me. I felt that I was good at it. I liked it. And then there was also a future. So the world was evolving, and that field was going to be relevant, because that's also important, right? And for me, that sort of then took me on a path of, I studied business information systems, and then I continued on on that path. I got a job as a software developer. And I started my life in the UK, which, was great. I mean, for people outside, it seemed like, Lola was doing really awesome. She found what she loves, her passion, and, she was excelling in her career. But, I think it's always good to reassess. So even as you climb up or you go, through life, I think it's always important to assess where you are, to have deep reflection on, okay, is this really what I want to be doing over the next 5 years? Am I in a good place? What is my ultimate vision, right? Where do I want to go? Am I satisfied? Because I think one of the key things around this podcast is also, the program is really around, even finding alternative sources of income, continually staying relevant, possibly changing your path. So you want to constantly be asking yourself that question, because at the end of the day, I think we all owe it to ourselves to really make the best out of this life or this opportunity we have to be living. So I think I had sort of was doing fine. I mean, it looked like I was fine, but in my heart, I knew that there were things I wanted to do that I hadn't quite done. And the way things were going, it looked like I was never going to do them. So as I said, I already had a great career. In fact, I think I had been working full time for about 9 years. And I remember one day I was in my office and it was quite late. So I think we worked late, and I was walking to like the exit. I think I was going home. And then there was this elderly woman who was working on my floor. And she sort of opened up. So she was like right in my front. So I was walking behind her, and then I came, and then she was so frail and tiny. And then she sort of tried to open the door, like hold the door for me. And honestly, so I was walking, she went before me, she opened the exit door and sort of held it for me. And I remember looking at her and almost like my life sort of flashed before my eyes. I just imagined myself being 50 something, or, I mean, she looked so old and frail. And I asked myself, like, would this be me in the next couple of years? Would I be here? I mean, I literally just freaked out on that. And I thought, look, man, I mean, as I said, we only have one life. And the truth is that regrets, I think, is one of the biggest things that we should always try and avoid. And I try and avoid personally. Like, it's just best you really try, because regret never leaves you. Like, regret is something that even people on their dying beds, they would, they have regrets, So for me, I just realized that, look, the time was now. I wanted to explore entrepreneurship, see what I could do on that end. So I actually so I just decided to take the leap. I think one of the key things for me was that I already sort of had funding to take care of myself regardless of what happened, because I was living at a good place. I was a VP in the organization I was. There was a fear, of course, that if I leave now, what would happen? Would I just be destroying my career that I'd used 9 years to build? I also come from a family where my parents are very big on education and career. I'm also married. There are all these implications, like if you just leave or decide that you want to change your path, what happens? People think you're crazy. So I remember people thinking, Lola, but you're doing so well, but I'd already fixed that in my mind. Look, don't worry, it's my life type of thing. I also was sure to engage my stakeholders. I call them stakeholders because they all have, a part to play in our lives, so my parents, my husband. Okay, this is my plan. I already calculated that, most times, I mean, people even leave like their work for a year and a half to travel and things like that. So it's not the worst. I'd already given myself like a 2-year plan that, look, if nothing works out, then 2 years is not a big, it's good timing. It's not enough for people to say you have forgotten all you've learned in the past X amount of years. So, and it's not too long and it's not too short. So I sort of had figured that out, that I would just come back if nothing worked. And so I took that leap with support of all the key people around me. And I was then able to go into entrepreneurship. That's when I launched my first startup. In fact, for me, that experience was just awesome because I never built anything from scratch. You know, I took time out, did that. So in the end, I founded 2 startups. During that time, one thing that I was very deliberate about was, you know, exploring other skills as opposed to just my corporate skills. So for instance, I'd love to write. So I thought, okay, this would be a good time for me to explore that, right? So in fact, I went and I upskilled myself. I took a creative writing course. I was also working on my own travel blog and photography studio. So I actually did some courses around photography. I'm a very good photographer. If you, Demialde, I'm sure you don't know that. I'm sure, and that was the time when we met, actually.
No idea. Wow.
You know, I did so many things. In fact, towards the end of that time as well, like just as I was getting to my 2 years, having had the experience of running startups that were actually thriving, I then went and I did an MBA as well at Imperial College in London. Very tough decision at the time because a lot was happening for me in Nigeria, but I also had sort of calculated that, you know, I needed to be all round. You know, if I'm running a business, for me, not everybody needs an MBA, right? But for me, with my background in technology, I felt like I needed one, you know, so I actually had to invest in myself and get that done as well. And honestly, I have to say that things just sort of lined up in my path because, one, I think I was first clear on what I wanted to do over the next few years. By the time I was done, I was already clear. There were some opportunities that I didn't even know existed at the time when in the 2 years before, when I had left the corporate world, there were some roles that were not even a big deal at that time. But what happened was, by the time I was coming back into the career world and just looking at what was happening on the, you know, I was still gauging the environment, I realized that there were some really strong career paths that I was so suited for because of my experience. So I realized that one, it was called digital and innovation, which was now a sort of a mix between innovation and tech, really. And the kind of skills they were looking for were people like myself, which were very few at the time, who, one, had a corporate experience, and two, had experience sort of building things from scratch or building products or running a startup. And so I wasn't a traditional banker, and I also wasn't a key traditional entrepreneur. So I basically had both skills. So in fact, I had become highly sought after, essentially. So by the time I was even deciding on what to do, it was almost as if the market was already calling me that, oh, we think you're such a good fit for these jobs. Can you come and sort of interview for them? And so I decided, okay, there was one time I saw this job spec and I felt like this was just a perfect fit for me, literally. I felt like they had just created this job for me, essentially. So for me, it was very simple. You know, I already had my startups running. There was no conflict of interest with my job. So I just decided to, you know, carry on and, you know, go into that, not sort of leaving all the work I'd done on the ground as well. I also continued writing my book. It did take me a while to release it, but, you know, because then I had to mix so many things. When I was doing my MBA, it was the time I actually got the offer. I got sought after for a job to come back to Nigeria to run. So I had to be doing my MBA, also be doing my job. Also, I had other things running. So it was not easy, but honestly, now looking back, these were some of the best decisions I've made. I'm really happy with taking those risks that I did at the time, and, you know, just really happy where I am now. So I think that's a brief. from me. Demialde, over to you for now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lola, for sharing that brief of your story. And it's a super interesting story of the journey. There's a number of things that I just want to tease out. We're going to have questions come. Hopefully, I just want to say to everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box as we sort of like walk back through Lola's story and this conversation. So, I mean, one of the first things, Lola, that sort of strikes me, I haven't heard your story twice. This particular thing that you said twice, the one about the old lady that you saw, and that one I think was a wake-up call, if you will, in that sense, because you seen at the end of your life, would I say, I did the things that I needed to do, I was supposed to do. No, I think that's powerful. There's something that you mentioned that I think it's Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, he calls it the regret minimization framework. So it says that when you're trying to do something, one of the questions you should ask yourself is, on my deathbed, will I regret that I didn't do this thing? You know, so there's actually now a framework that he calls the regret minimization framework. And like you said, regrets, nobody wants to live with regrets. We owe it to ourselves to make the best of this life that we have been given to live. One other thing that you said that I liked was the worst case scenario thinking. Because I want to talk about this a bit more. When people are trying to make some of these changes, you know, sometimes whether it's or step out of a current job to another one, or transition to entrepreneurship, or do something entirely new, the fear is there about what if it doesn't work out, you know? But you said something about multiple, you actually did worst case scenario thinking. What's the worst case? If it doesn't work out, I'll get there. And I think that that's powerful in terms of helping you to make a decision. Because sometimes if you can get to peace, if you can be at peace with the worst case, and then the worst case is not so bad after all, then there are chances that you can actually go forward and make this decision that you want to make, right? And I think many times, one of the things, and I want to say this to say this as well, as we're teasing out some of the lessons from the story, is really like doing that thinking. Because sometimes people want to make this leap, but they don't give enough time to do the processing, or they don't set aside enough time to actually process and say, okay, what are the things that I critically need to consider? Because when you start poking holes in the challenge, then it sort of reduces in size and is manageable. So you talked about speaking to your stakeholders, exploring the worst case scenarios, and then really finding, okay, I can do this, I can make this decision. So that is obviously something that is critical. Another thing you talked about was really when you went on this break, you went and had gained a lot of skills. Like I didn't know the photography part, but you know, that's also interesting to hear. The gaining all the skills that you gain. And maybe to start off the questions, and I have sort of like, let me zoom out a bit and ask that sort of high level question around how this, because it's something that I wanted you to speak more to. You were talking about the fact that when you went out, you went and brought, for lack of better words, some skills that now made you more desirable at your career. What is the, I'm trying to, and I want to say, what would have been the difference, right? If you could look back and say, if you hadn't gotten those skills, what would your career have looked like if you had continued on that trajectory? Like, what was it going to happen? And I want us to just think about that for a bit. Yeah.
You know, before I answer that question, what I'll say is, you see, before I left, because I was living in the UK, before I left the UK, I had colleagues that I was working with in an organization, and you know, we still sort of catch up and, you know, have conversations. And So in fact, the other day I had a conversation with one of my former colleagues, and I mean, she was talking about some stuff, and I was just like, I mean, I didn't want to say what she was talking about, like, but I looked back and I thought, what? You mean this? I would be talking about this kind of thing like till now? Like, seriously, I found, in fact, I actually started laughing because I was just like, I mean, you mean
You've
there's still,
gone, yeah,
I
life
have
has
gone
gone so far.
so far. This looks like another life,
Yeah.
talking about piles and
I,
weird.
I almost asked you, I wanted to say compare yourself to your former colleagues, but I didn't also want to bring in comparison when I was going to ask that question. But I
No,
can imagine that. Yeah. Sorry, is it my network or yours? It's frozen for a bit. Okay. Probably.
sorry,
Okay.
I had something block my,
Okay.
So I
Cool.
mean, you're right. It's not like I'm really comparing myself, because at the end of the day, everybody has a different path. For them, they're sort of happy with that. But for me, because of I knew where I was going,
Mm.
I knew what would make me happy and what I was sort of destined to do. Looking back and thinking that this is what I would have been talking about now, it's just like amazing. So for me, I mean, that is huge. I think some of the key things that I learned along the journey during that time that I took was, one, innovation, how to actually be creative, like, what it takes to really size a market, look for opportunities that were not there or are not there, or are new and novel, actually being able to build something up from scratch. Because I was in a career, if you know, so many of the times when we're already in a career, we already, someone has done the work already. So, but this was me actually trying to develop that. So being able to run a team, to business on my own. This is now for the sort of side. So this was the digital innovation. To be honest, if I didn't have those skills, I wouldn't have been able to get into this field. Honestly, I would have been stuck with just pure technology, which is not really where I was going. So that's actually a very big thing, which is why I'm really big on, we all have, I know that, life has its own path, or we sometimes feel like life is just moving along. But I think a lot of times we also have gut feelings where you really feel like you're supposed to be doing something. And I feel like you owe it to yourself to actually try, because you really don't know where that is leading. I didn't even know that the market was going to open up so big for a skill set like mine. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Absolutely.
exactly. So, so that was huge. I mean, in terms of even honing in on my photography skills and all. I mean, who knew that social media was going to be so great? I mean, I take fantastic photos, by the way. You
Amazing.
know, yes, do you understand?
Yeah.
Writing, I have my own novel. Like, there's some things that I was able to get from the courses that really helped me, as I sort of was on that journey to becoming a writer. So I don't know if that sort of answers, but definitely, honestly,
Hey,
it's like one of the best decisions I actually made, really, but difficult,
absolutely.
very difficult. That's what I need to.
Very difficult. No, so that's a good question. That's a good thing. No, thanks. You answered the question well. Like I said, initially I was going to say, um, if you think about yourself and the former colleagues at work, but then you got to the point, which because sometimes it just helps you to benchmark, even though you're not comparing yourself. Yeah. I want to say this to everybody who's here. We're super grateful to have you here, but we also want to know that this is for you, and we want to be able to answer your questions or also feel engaged in conversation with you. So I'm going to ask two things. Number one, if there's something that has stood out for you so far from what Lola shared and what we have been sharing, please put it in the chat box. Okay, we want to see some of the lessons that you are learning. But importantly, I'm sure that there's a reason that you came here as well. So if there are questions, even if you don't want to ask, there's sometimes I teach and some students say asking for a friend, or I host some of those kinds of events and they say they're asking for a friend. So the truth is you can, even if you don't want to ask for yourself, you can ask for a friend. But I want to see that response in the chat box. Put a question there, put a comment on something that you're learning, and let's talk a bit more about it. Now, Lola, as we welcome some of those, I just want to see that in the chat box, okay? As we welcome some of those, I see some questions here that people have asked, and this one is a bit, we will come back and boil down all the step 1, step 2, step 3, if there's anything like that. But I want to ask one of the questions that I saw that people sent in before time. Someone says, how do I stay relevant? Okay, I know that's a bit of, it's going to pick on some things, but that's a question for you to answer. How do I stay relevant?
Oh, okay. So to be honest, I'm one thing that we should just even be really happy about is also the way the world has evolved and how information is so available at just your fingertips. You do Google, you found an answer to your question, you found the training you can go for, you found a conference you can go for. So I think, how do you stay relevant? I mean, first of all, you need to be on top of things. You need to be able to research, listen to the news, what is happening around you. It's not okay to just not know what's going on around you. I think that's the best, the biggest step is actually first even knowing what is relevant and what's happening. And then then taking the next actionable steps to actually now ensuring you are now relevant based on the information out there that's relevant. So do you need to learn a new skill? What do you need to do in your own field? Are there opportunities you've missed? Are there new opportunities that perhaps you may even be good at? Because when people were doing jobs before becoming a social media content plan manager came about, those people were doing things as well, but they obviously have found that, maybe this is something they're more skilled to, or they enjoy more. So I think it's really being open to research, attending the right things, speaking to people, and then you now doing your homework on the side to ensure that you are actually relevant. I think there was one time like that for me that I really, in fact, I remember thinking this will never happen to me again. I was working in an organization, and I'd been there for about maybe like 4 years or something. Now, the thing about being in the same job for 4 years is that you need to be very, very deliberate about your development. If not, you just be very comfortable. You know how to do your job. You know what to do. It doesn't change. So you just get used to just the repetition of what you have to do. And then you find out that the market has moved and, people are talking about different things and you are talking about something else. So I remember being in a job and I had just become so complacent. I was doing it very well, but that was all I was doing. And then I think something was happening in the organization. I thought, okay, I think I need to move jobs. And then I started looking in the market, doing all these job search and co. And I just realized that my job spec had sort of changed. I mean, I was seeing you need this skill, Unix, all these things in there. And I thought, oh my God. Honestly, I had to go and buy textbooks. Seriously, I remember I had to purchase textbooks and co to actually bring myself to speed to start having interviews and things like that. And I just told myself that would never happen again. Like, do you understand? You don't want to be trying to catch up from 4 years behind. If they call me for an interview now, let me tell you, I can go for an interview now because I am up to speed on what's happening consistently. Yes. So just FYI on that.
No, that's good. No, I like it. No, it's true. You could be working somewhere and the industry has changed around you. And because all you know is your job, and this is a super important point, staying in touch with the trends around you that are happening in the industry. And because that's even going to help you when you want to sort of switch, because I know the other thing, if you want to switch a job or if you want to switch even the careers, you need to know what's going on. And that's a good answer. I want to take another question that's here. How do I how do you reinvent yourself and change career paths? So this person is asking about changing career paths, right? This is another interesting sort of angle, but not so far off. So let's
Okay, so how do you reinvent yourself and change career paths? So in fact, I
yeah.
actually want to reference something that you said about this worst case scenario thing, because many of these things are difficult. It's not easy to wake up and say, I'm changing career, or now I've been working as a lawyer. Today I want to go and start my own tech entrepreneurship firm or whatever. They are not difficult decisions. So I don't want it to sound easy at all. Do you understand? They
You
were
mean they are
decisions.
difficult decisions?
They are difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And you will need courage, support to actually follow through, because the journey itself is not even easy. So you get to a point where you're like, oh my God, should I have done this? Maybe I shouldn't have. But you always have to remember why you went on that journey. So they're in no way easy. One of the things that I was very big on is worst case scenario painting. I'd already said, okay, what is the worst case scenario for me now? My husband is also he's an entrepreneur. He was an entrepreneur at the time. I was like, okay, the worst case is that both of us, we will just not have money while I'm recovering or whatever. God forbid something happened to him, we'll just go and live with one of us's parents. Like, I had painted out the worst, like, we're not going to die. That was it. We will live to fight another day.
That's good.
So I had to really paint that out so that it doesn't out, because regret is worse than failure. That's just the truth. It is far worse than, you can always pick yourself up. Always pick yourself up. Seriously, there are so many people who didn't make it until they're 40, 50, 35. So you can always pick yourself up from failure. Regret is one thing that you just cannot, there's no way out. If you didn't do it, you just didn't do it,
Sure.
So I think that's very important to say. So in terms of how you can change career paths, reinvent yourself, I think it still boils into or ties into what I was saying. First of all, you need to assess the situation. You need to, what career path are you trying to change to? Is it something that's relevant? Is it something that you like? Is it something that, do you understand, is going to, I believe in returns. I really, I know everybody's different, but I don't want to be putting in all my efforts and, my job is, is nobody cares about it enough to pay me for it. I'm sorry, that I can do on the side if it's really a passion, but I want to, do you understand? So I want to be sure that my job is something that people are after and, it has a future, so I'm big on ensuring that you're also looking to that path. Do you like it? Do you have a passion? Is this something that is relevant for the future, or, and all that? And then doing a lot of research on that. I mean, as I said, you can start up some training so that you can, learn more about it and be sure it's something that you want to do. I think you should speak to people in that field as well, so that they can sort of say to you or tell you, more about this, and even potentially maybe even help you with some opportunities. Their training. So I even know a couple of people who are on this change of career path thing. So they're doing a couple of courses that I know are relevant. In fact, somebody called me for this morning. She was just trying to get a idea of like an interview she had. So which means that the course she's doing has sort of helped her, get an interview. So I think you don't have to like just completely stop and say, okay, now I don't like this career again. I'm going to just, stop what I'm doing. I think if it's possible, you can still continue what you're doing and still be researching and having those conversations. And then you can start interviewing if it's a job and go that way. Even if it's a startup, there's nothing wrong with you even still starting that while you're in what you're doing. I've done that before. where I was actually testing out the market with while I was working to see, I was working with somebody to actually do that. So, I think it's more or less on that path. One thing I will say is I'm not big on just making decisions without thinking, because sometimes you can even just be annoyed with your office. I hate this
Yeah.
place. I'm just going. And the thing is, why are you so angry? They're still paying you, you're still there. Do you understand? Do you understand? Just why don't you just
Absolutely.
sit down and figure your next steps out? Like, why nobody has, do you understand? Just calm down. Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. There was somebody this week, I think it was a joke. There's this guy who thought he had won the lottery and then went and peed on his boss's chair and on his table.
Yeah.
And then when they went back and checked, it wasn't the one who won the lottery. That guy is grounded, I guess, for life, I would say. No, that is a solid point. Yeah.
So
No, go
in
for
fact,
it.
sorry, Demialde, I want to say something as well. So even when I was leaving the job that I had, in fact, I had developed such a good relationship that my boss actually said that if I ever wanted to come back, I should come. They're going to be willing to open up for me. And true to his word, when I was doing my MBA and I went back to the organization, he actually offered me a role. So in fact, I remember getting to the UK and within like 2 weeks, I actually had a job. So that just about this not burning bridges as well. I'm leaving. I have this new startup idea that's making millions. Somebody has given me funding. Life is, do you understand? It's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. I was having a podcast conversation with somebody else who was working with Microsoft and went on and started his own business. And he was saying the same thing, right? Like, you don't want to burn the bridges. So that's an important one. I think even when you're switching careers, you can't just do it like from an emotionally, you have to rationally think about it and ensure the things are arranged. There's a comment here, Beautiful Beauty says, I'm grateful how she was able to say how difficult it is, yeah, in switching career and getting an MBA. I was already thinking how she achieved all of this in this space of 2 years, but hearing her say how difficult it was is such an encouragement. Great to hear that you're encouraged. And I think everybody on this call, the fact that you're even on this call means that you know that in order to get something of value, you have to lean into it. It's not going to come to meet you. And like she said again, she reiterated that, Lola reiterated and said, it was difficult, like it wasn't easy. And it was something that really took a lot of effort, energy, and time. And I can share the story personally as well from getting my own MBA, but even from doing something else in my career, which almost at that point, almost sort of like did like a 50% increase on my salary, which is not something in a promotion, sort of like that promotion. And when I was transitioning into digital, it was similar. There was this opportunity, but it was like Greek to me because I was more like soft skills kind of person, teaching leadership. But then I had to lead into some of those trainings, those conversations, spend a lot of extra time. My wife will tell you how grueling the period was. But then off of that, it took me to another level in the organization in terms of the projects that I was able to do, global projects, but also now has helped me build. And I think that this is the journey. I'm knowing that there's a price to be paid for reinvention. Somebody said, when you see the cocoon of a butterfly, before a butterfly becomes a butterfly, it's usually in a cocoon, like what's it called? It's called a pupa or imago. And so it looks as if it's struggling to get out of that cocoon. If you help it, right, to make the journey easier, that butterfly can never fly. The wings are going to be beautiful, but it can never fly. Yeah. The struggle is part of building the muscles in order for the butterfly to later be able to fly and flex its beautiful wings. So you can rest assured knowing that if you are putting in work and you're doing all the learning, like Lola is saying, on your journey of reinvention, is going to come to a place of what's it called, of empowering you for your next step. I think Beautiful Beauty also mentioned something about mentorship. which I think is important. But you mentioned something else. She mentioned something else about having skills that you don't know how to monetize. Now, that's a good one. We might not be able to delve into all of it in this conversation. Maybe Lola can talk about how she's monetizing our authoring, writing, and our photography skills, which I never knew about. But the good news is that in this series of conversations, we're going to have more sessions that are even around monetizing your skill. And because there's a lot of what we do at Planbpreneur, so you're going to have more sessions on that. But Lola, if you will, take a stab at how are you monetizing some of the skills as well that you've gained over time?
I think the thing about skills is that, again, the skills have to be relevant to the time you're in. If not, it's going to be very difficult to monetize, right? I'll give you different examples. And sometimes it is when you really delve deep. There were some things I never knew. So I didn't even know that travel bloggers made money. Did you know that some people who actually travel and get paid? I mean, there are hotels that pay for them to come. Do you understand? It's almost like in every area, there's a way to monetize relevant skills that are relevant to now. Photography as well. I was doing it because it was important I could do it and be able to document things on my blog. But I didn't know that even in photography, it's possible to actually, there are digital outlets where you can sell your pictures. So you upload your pictures on, you have your portfolio as an artist, and then people can buy your picture because they use it for things like websites, company things. Like, who knew that? I mean, do you understand? It was only by deep research and actually thinking, how can I actually monetize this? But I actually found out that there were ways to monetize these things. You can actually monetize your knowledge as well. Who knew that, when you become, I guess, an expert in your field, people actually call you and want you to participate in things that they want to even pay for. That's a big deal now. There are people who are actually, I've seen people now who they're on top of their career. They're actually creating training curriculums on all these platforms where people go for trainings, and people are actually subscribing and buying these things. Do you understand what I mean? So for my book as well, I was even more focused on the what it did and the message, which is around, two young people who leave the country, which is an issue, which is happening in Africa today. Everyone is leaving for greener pastures. I've been able to tell that story and how these people found their own paths in different parts of the world. And all. I didn't even know that one, of course, people will buy your books, physical copies, hard copies, audio copies. There's a chance to actually make it into a play, movie. Like now there's Netflix, that is big on African themed stories. Like sometimes, right, I just feel like you really need to follow your heart or follow what is your guts, because sometimes you may not even, it's just something that you feel like you need to do. You can speak to people around as well to sort of gauge, what you're thinking. I know that sometimes they say there are all these naysayers and co, but I want to believe that we all have like a circle of trusted people, which is very important, who will be there to give you their thoughts. I was saying to Demialde, I think it was yesterday, that sometimes we are so afraid. I think it's the way we were brought up. Like, if you have any idea, don't even tell anybody, because they will just steal it and all sorts of things. But sometimes you actually need to talk about your solution, because sometimes you just have a thought, and you don't even know who has the missing piece. You start off with, I'm just thinking of a way to, maybe transform the African narrative around, I don't know, photography or something. You just see somebody in your trusted circle that would say, actually, do you understand? That's actually a good idea. I was in a conversation yesterday or 2 weeks ago, and this is what they were talking about. This is so relevant. Like, So again, when you're in the point where, you don't know, you're confused, but you have it in your heart that it's something you want to do, maybe you need to just have a few conversations around it and see, what people will say, and, whether you can gain some ideas. Sometimes the investor you're looking for is even in the same room with you, but you don't know, so that networking is also important, especially when you're in a phase of exploration and discovery. It's very, very important.
Absolutely. Love it. Brilliant. Super, super, super important. We're gradually getting to the end of this. I'm going to see if we can take one more question from the pre-sent questions, since we haven't had any questions right now on the chat. If somebody still wants to send a question, you're more than welcome to send an urgent burning one. But like I said, there's a number of golden points Lola just made about monetizing your knowledge. Okay. There's a question here. It says, at what point do you quit what you think you are called? At what point do you quit to do what you think you are called to do? I think yeah. So this is an interesting one. I don't know. There's a number of assumptions behind this. The person or as a mental model around calling, and all that. So the person is asking a question: at what point do you know it's time to quit to go and do what you are called to do? Lola, do you get the question?
Yeah.
It's a deep question. We might not be able to take all the parts, but at least can take a stab at it, because it goes into all the ways that people understand the idea of callings, etc. Or yeah.
Okay.
But perhaps that person feels what they're doing is not aligned with what they are called to do, perhaps. Yeah.
So that for me, it's a fair enough question. And I think it's saying, at what point do you know you need to quit and go and start, maybe whatever you feel you're called to do. I think for me, and I think it's different for everybody, but for me, it would be at a point where I feel that I am comfortable to make that call, because I don't want to quit at the expense of, do you understand because sometimes, let me tell you, if you are very hungry, you can't think clearly.
Very
you can't
true.
think clearly. Do you understand? Because sometimes you're so eager to just, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm quitting. I'm doing all this. But you can't even think clearly when you are hungry, when you're not comfortable, there's no AC in your, where you are. You can't even think clearly. So for me, the point for me is a point where I have been able to clearly articulate what my next steps are. I'm comfortable that in taking this risk, I'm comfortable with my support. I'm comfortable with worst case scenario, like, okay, this is what will happen. So for me, those two things are very important. And 3, I totally understand what I'm going to get into. I understand the risks, I understand the return, so that, because it won't be nice for you to have, at the end of the day, you can still always come back, but after you've put in all these things, I'm going to do this, and then you get in there, you didn't even know that, before you are able to set this thing up, you need 3 years experience, so you need, do you understand what I mean? So
yeah,
a place of clear knowledge and research, and you're comfortable. If it's even possible, it's good to even have had a network, have started or put your leg in the market already, before you say you're quitting. I think those are some of the, let me just try and think, that are important. Being able to, yeah. For now, I think those are some key things, but I'm sure, as I said, it's different for everyone. I don't believe in just abandoning ship, except, you're being, they are strangling you. It's a life or death matter. It's just better to get the right time, for you.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I agree with you. Excuse me, I don't know, the person might also, if there's a spiritual connotation to it, we might not go into some of that, but it's because there's also people who feel like there's a time I need to go. But again, like you're saying, there's just, even if there's a spiritual connotation to it, where you feel like it's God that is calling you in that sense to do something, you need to ask the questions. You need to be clear, right? You need to know, how am I
Yes.
going to take care of the other responsibilities that I currently have? How am I going to navigate this journey? Like you're saying, test the waters, prototype, right? Pilot
Yes.
something, start something and see, okay, down the line, and then there is a clear plan. I think I totally am aligned with you. And I think that's a super, super important point that you make there about transitions. Okay, I hope that as we begin to bring this to a close, I'll just say a few, mention a few things, and then and then allow Lola to round up with a few thoughts, and I would say bye to you. So again, guys, I know there's questions, just some announcements. There's questions around, hey, somebody was asking, how do I monetize my knowledge, etc., or how do I transition into entrepreneurship? Planbpreneur Academy has brought together a number of experts who are coaches and sharing their experience and using frameworks to help you to make these transitions. So you would see Lola, whom you've had the opportunity here today, is one of the coaches in the sessions as well. And there's other amazing people from some of who have been trusted by some of these amazing organizations across the world and across the continent. And they will be able to support you. So you should check out academy.planbpreneur.com and see what we're up to. One of our sessions is going to start in March. So that would be something that if you're looking to launch a new project, create a new source of income and impact, monetize your knowledge, that is the place you want to go, because everybody on this panel, all these coaches have done it. And they've not only done it, they're doing it and they've trained and are training other people to do it. So you're in good company when you go to academy.planbpreneur.com, and you can always reach out to us and ask us questions, okay? Also, as we bring this to a close, we're going to be bringing another coach to you in the coming week, which is the 3rd of March. And I think Lola was saying this earlier, that there are people who have amassed years of experience in something, and they're not called for their knowledge. They are now what you would call consultants, right? Because they are able to solve problems for people, or they're able to use their expertise. I'm excited to say I'm a consultant. I've been doing that for some time. So it's exciting to be able to not rely on your job alone for your income, and and be able to make good money out of consulting. I can tell you for sure that if you get your game right, there is, if you're looking to go into consulting, there is some good money to be made. And we're going to dive into that next week with Andrew, a good friend of mine and also a coach with Academy Planbpreneur.com. And we're going to be talking about how do you start and grow your consulting business if you want to go into freelance consulting. So hopefully this also helps you to learn about monetizing your knowledge, but importantly, actually adding value to others, right? Regardless of what you are doing. Okay. It's been a good evening. I did enjoy the conversation. I did honestly miss a number of comments in the chat and questions I would have loved to see, because I love all that feedback. But I did love a comment that I think Beautiful Baby, if I'm pronouncing that right, if Beautiful Beauty, I'm sorry, did actually share with us some of our thoughts on this. So we're going to end it there. I told you it was going to be super short. I've got 2 kids. I have a daughter whose birthday is today. We need to go do some
Wow.
birthday stuff. And yeah, so thank you so much, Lola. Thank you so much. And but we hope that we were able to bring value to everybody who was a part of this conversation. And look out for the next one. If I were you, I'd register and share it. Of course, we're going to send it to your email. We'll also send you the recording. And I can't wait to hang out with you again next week. And when you're coming next week, please come with the questions, right? Come with the readiness to engage. Lola, thank you again. Lola, I just want to say maybe 2-3 minutes, just share any other, I don't want to say final thoughts because it's an ongoing process, but thoughts that people can take away today around reinventing yourself professionally, staying valuable, and all that. Yeah.
Okay. So I think for me, there's something I just strongly believe in, which is that it's never really too late while you're alive to step out. That I strongly believe that, and I've seen that consistently happen even with my parents, who, I mean, at 60, 65, they're doing things 70 that, you know, just you would never have thought they would sort of be doing now. So I'm a strong believer in that. I watched the movie. It was based on a true story not too long ago. I just remember the name of the movie. And in it was this woman, she was like quite old, and she knew she was going to die. And she had been reading like obituaries of her friends who had been dying, right? And she thought about what would they write in her own obituary. And she realized that there were some, in fact, she had said there's some key things that make up an obituary, which is like you were able to make impact. There was one about doing something out of character or people wouldn't expect. And then, of course, there's just your normal biography of things that you did. And so she realized she was going to die, right, in a couple of months. She didn't know when. And she decided that, look, my obituary must be complete. So she contacted an obituary writer and said, look, I need you to help me because this is what's going to make a big obituary and a good one. And so please follow my path over the next few, hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Absolutely.
Follow my path over the next few months while I do this. She decided that she was going to make impact. So she went to a community center. And so be it, there was a young girl who was there who they were looking for a mentor for. And she fitted in perfectly. She took this girl on a journey and started to mentor her through that time before she died. On the same note, she realized that she always loved to play all these records. So she literally just walked into a radio station saying, look, I'm not even going to ask you to pay me, but I can tell you I'm one of the best DJs out there. I used to do this when I was young. And they actually hired and gave her like a small slot where within this time, she's able to play some really cool music that, people, and it actually did really well. And in the end, she did die, but she really died happily. And, these things were actually accounted to her as done. In fact, her obituary was super fantastic. So for me, and she felt fulfilled, right? And which I think is even the most important thing. She made impact, she felt fulfilled. So I think for me, it's really that, as we're on this journey of life, it's a continuous process. We need to reflect every year or 6 months. Am I on the right path? Is this what I should be doing? Is what I'm doing still relevant? It's a continuous process, and it's never too late to decide that you want to actually do something else or go in this path or add this onto your portfolio of things that you're doing. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I love that. You're amazing. That last story was spot on. I don't think I've paid attention to obituaries that way before. And as you started to say that, I started to ask myself, what is something that when people read later, they will be like shocked, like, oh, we didn't know that you could, there's like all those different components. But like you're saying, it's about no regrets, right? Like we talked about the regret minimization framework earlier. And so I wish with all my heart that everybody on this call, I'm sure is on the same path as well, with the same energy, and is really also doing that periodic review like you've talked about, but also ensuring that there's no regret. Well, I was super grateful to have you. Can't wait. I'm looking forward to the Academy Planbpreneur sessions that are happening in May, where we will do more, in March, more like the breakdown and workshop and even allow people to get into a bit more. I want to thank everyone again. I want to thank my teammates, Bolaji and Colleen as well, for continuing to set all this up and getting the next session ready as well. Yeah, and I did mention to you, by the way, guys, let me plug this one in, that you all know Lola's book, Lagos to London. You should go lagostolondon.com and go check out the book. You can order on Amazon. So I know we have people from all over here today on the call. So you can order the book on Amazon. It will get to you wherever you are. And it's a really great book. I have mine. It's sitting somewhere in Lagos waiting to be shipped to me. But I'm looking forward to putting lay my hands on it. Thank you so much, Lola.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Just thank you again for being with us. There's some music as we go. All right.
That way, don't make me move that way. Me, I know one sleep for highway. Before you cross, guys, look at your sideways. Me, I know come look us for child's play. So I say, them they find me. For the long time, I've been silent. I don't run I've been styling, but they think say I'm in hiding. To find me, I'll be on no Zumba by the way. 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 Coming to you. To be giant for your pocket. If you only fight for your pocket, for your pocket. October 2020, something happened with the government. That is say we forget for where? For Zumba, by the way.